Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Ethereum on the eve of EIP 1559. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Remember, you can find a link to the premium list sale in the description below as well if you want to lock in the lower rate. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, if you followed this channel for a while with Ethereum, we have been on one hell of a journey, have we not? We watched it go from $80, to several $100s. I believe it went to almost 300 back over here in February, and then we watched it tank, right? I mean, over here it was actually just above 100. It hit 80 over here. We came up to just under 300. Then we had this massive move back to the downside to the $80 to $90 range, and ever since then it's been a long journey, to say the least. And I know some of you guys have been here the entire time, and you'll remember, the accumulation phase of a lifetime video we did over here, the reaccumulation phase of a lifetime right here, the overvaluation reaccumulation phase of a lifetime video right here. And it begs the question, where are we today? Okay, because Ethereum, it's gone on this major move to $4,400, and it went all the way down to $1,700. Which, if we take a measured move on that, represents a 61% drop. And we discussed many times, even when we were at the peak over here, that in bull markets, it's very natural to see that kind of stuff happen, right? It's very natural to see 60% drops in the market, right? We've seen them many, many times. If you go from this peak down to this one, it was a 72% drop. If you go from this peak down to this one, it was, about a 60% drop or so. So 60% drops in the market are relatively normal for Ethereum and for many cryptocurrencies for that matter. I mean, Bitcoin, for instance, saw a 55% drop itself. So the fact that Ethereum was only down 60% is actually pretty impressive, So now that we've been rallying, right, we've been rallying for a couple of weeks. And now everyone wants to know, what's going to happen, right? After EIP 1559, is it going to keep rallying? Is it not? And as always, you guys know one of the things you should be looking for is Bitcoin, right? Look to see what Bitcoin's doing. Now, my general understanding of the market is that typically, if Bitcoin has, typically if Bitcoin's above the 20-week and moving sideways, then it's a relatively good outlook for the rest of the market, right? We know that. We've experienced that many times. We've seen what happens when Bitcoin goes sideways, right? The rest of the market goes crazy. So we know that. Now, when Bitcoin's below the 20-week and it rallies, we can still see the market, the rest of the market do fairly well. But what you generally won't see is you won't see the rest of the market putting in all-time highs. So I would say there's a key distinction between Bitcoin being above the 20-week and Bitcoin being below the 20-week. I would speculate that Ethereum will be unable to put in all-time highs above $4,400 if Bitcoin remains below the 20-week, okay? So if you want to see Ethereum put in new all-time highs, then ideally Bitcoin should be above the 20-week SMA, which again right now is coming in at a very modest $43,611, okay? Now, from there, well, what are some other things we can look at? Well, I've always been, fairly straightforward with everyone, right? Bitcoin's my number one position over Ethereum, and then Ethereum's number two. Because if you're going to be deterministic about anything in the market, I've said this 1,000 times, it should be that Bitcoin's going to trend up with time, right? And the reason we say that is not because our hearts and desires want that to happen. Because again, the market does not care what our hearts and what our heart wants or what our desires are. The reason we say that is just because the data suggests that's what's going to happen, right? If the data didn't suggest it, then we wouldn't assume it's going to. If the chart looked, something like this, and this, which is just the inverted chart of Bitcoin. Would we look at that and say, oh yeah, like we're just gonna keep buying the bottom, right? Let's buy the bottom in 2011. Oh, it kept dropping. Let's buy it in 2013. It kept dropping. So this is not a chart you would want to chase, okay? So we don't make the conclusion, or we don't say that we're going to be deterministic about Bitcoin trending up with time because that's what we necessarily want to happen. We just make that conclusion because that is just what is likely going to happen. And if that's what's likely going to happen, then you want to figure out how will other parts of the market respond. And remember, we've done plenty of price prediction videos for Ethereum this market cycle. My best guess, and again, I don't know exactly where the peak will be at the moment because I feel like, there's so much that has to play out between now and then. My best guess for the peak, which again does not have to happen this year, and I would be honestly absolutely shocked if it did happen this year. My best guess for the peak for Ethereum would probably be around 5 figures, plus or minus a few K. Okay, that is what I would guess. I don't think that 4,400 is the top, but I would contend that it's a local top for a while, right? Like we're probably not going to immediately put in a new local high. And if you go back and look at what Ethereum's done in the past, it could maybe give us some insight into what could be in store. Okay, so let's look at the 2 prior major moves that Ethereum has made. So you had this one here, and then you had this one. And then the final one was this third one, which was actually what most people in crypto would have experienced back in 2017, 2018, because they didn't get into it until the very end of the year. But there were 2 other more major moves before that one came. It was in fact these major moves that got people, talking about the market. And then finally, some people finally started to invest. So we look at this and we say, well, after this first move, what happened? Let's zoom in. Let's zoom in and see what happened after that first move. Well, it moved up in March of 2016, and then it came back down in April, and then back up in June. Now, it did technically put in an all-time high, right? And of course, being technically correct is in fact the best way to be correct. So we can say, look, it put in a new all-time high. Did it do anything crazy? Did it go all the way up like that? No. It was just sort of range bound for a while, right? I mean, we just sort of got accustomed to the new normal, right? We didn't, it's not like we did anything that substantial. The range on this was a pretty big range too. I mean, this ranged from like viewer discretion is advised. It ranged from $7 up to, and we're going to forget about the wick for a minute, from $7 up to around $15. So you're talking about a 2x in that range right there. And it ranged like that for a long time. I mean, this was a year. This was about a year, 364 days or so. So it was a long time. It's been a long time in that range. And when we look back at it, again, it seems like it's a pretty normal area where it's just going sideways, but we know that it wasn't, right? We had a drop. We had a drop from the top here of about 70%. So we know that, it might appear that it was just going sideways. And I think it is to some degree, but living through it during the time, you might have thought otherwise, okay? And then there was another time we went on a major move. And then look what happened. We came down to the 20-week, and then we ultimately came back up. And we didn't put in a new all-time high, right? And we came close to it, but we did not actually put a new all-time high. But what you will notice is what happened is that we generally trended up here, okay? So instead of having sort of like a sideways accumulation zone, it was sort of this like big triangle, okay? And another thing you'll recognize too is that this triangle lasted for about 2/3 of a year, okay? 2/3 of a year, maybe not quite 2/3 of a year, maybe not quite 2/3 of a year, maybe just over half. But it lasted a decent amount of time, and it ranged. It started off at 100, it came up to 400, back down to 150, back up to 400, back down to 200, back up, to 340, and then back down to 300, and then it finally broke through. And again, that took place over 7 months or so. A pretty long period of time, but during that time, remember, there was still a 60 or 70% drop. So then we can use that to maybe at least get some understanding of what could take place today. And what could take place is going to be largely dependent on Bitcoin getting above the 20-week, okay? There's no other way to put it. It's just going to be largely dependent on that. It's either going to get above it or it's not. The longer Bitcoin just sort of hangs out between 38K to 42K or something without really decisively figuring out what it's going to do, I mean, maybe Ethereum's just going to keep running for a little bit, right? I mean, this is certainly a possibility in the event that Bitcoin does just kind of chill out for a little while. So while I would contend that that's a decent possibility, I have a hard time imagining Ethereum going to 10K at this stage of the cycle. So again, I would love to be wrong about that. I do not envision a 10K Ethereum in 2021, though I would say it's possible in 2022, which I mean isn't even that long. I mean, it's not even that far away. Okay, so remember that we could be range bound for a while, and as far as I'm concerned, anything between this range we could call range bound. And if it goes for a year, if we spend a year in this area, I mean, it could last until the beginning of the year. So keep that in mind, and I would consider this range bound unless we're breaking well above $4,400. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind, and also keep in mind that this could we could come up for a bit and then maybe we come back down, and getting accustomed to the new normal. Now I want to talk about something you need to be careful about, okay? And it relates to, maybe portfolio weightings and Bitcoin versus Ethereum. Remember, Ethereum, you go out to like a weekly chart here. Ethereum tends to bleed against Bitcoin in Q4. It's not Q4 right now. Sometimes the bleed starts before Q4. But I would say that there is a higher probability than not that Ethereum bleeds against Bitcoin in Q4. But I don't think that's a bad thing. Normally, it just sets up a nice move for Q1 of the following year. So, if that means Bitcoin's going down, then obviously, the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation bleeds, then it kind of is not fun, because that means Ether USD is bleeding as well. If Ether Bitcoin's going down because Bitcoin's going up too quickly, then the constellation prize is, well, Bitcoin's likely going to drag Ethereum up with it. Ethereum's just not going to be able to keep pace with it, similar to last October, November, and December, okay? It's easy when when either Ethereum's moving with respect to Bitcoin or Bitcoin's moving with respect to Ethereum, it's easy to just assume that it's going to stay like that forever. But it never does, right? These moves are always temporary. Here Ethereum was moving down and it was like the end of the world. And then ultimately it changed direction, and then everyone thought, okay, it's just going to stay like this, but it didn't. And then it just keeps switching back and forth, right? It just comes back and forth. The pendulum swings back and forth, okay? And so now, and if you look closely, again, you'll see these moves in Q4 where Ethereum tends to bleed against Bitcoin. And we've seen that every single year since Bitcoin or since Ethereum's been around, that the Ethereum bleeds against Bitcoin in Q4, but then it goes on a crazy move in either Q1 or Q2. Or it generally starts in around Q1. Sometimes it extends out till Q2. Sometimes it doesn't, but it usually makes a move in January at the very least. Okay, we're already in August. I mean, January's not even that far away. That's with respect to Bitcoin. So what does that mean? Well, it's already August 4th. And we know that Q4 is coming up in just under 2 months. So you have about 7 weeks, 8 weeks at the very most of this continuing, maybe, right? I mean, it's a lot of ifs and maybes. I mean, obviously it could start at any time. I would contend that the bleed down against Bitcoin could start at any time. But if we continue to rally, if Ethereum continues to rally against Bitcoin, it likely means that a Bitcoin is just kind of hanging out and not doing anything. Like it's not going back down to 30K, but it's also likely not going up to 60K. And if it's not doing either of those things, then maybe this is going to be Ethereum's time to shine for a little bit. Even if that doesn't mean putting in new all-time highs, right? It might not mean putting in new all-time highs, but it could mean just the dominance going up. And that brings me to my next point, okay? So the dominance of Ethereum is something that we talk about occasionally on the channel, right? And back in January and February, I'll remind you, I was very adamant that people hang on to their Ethereum positions despite the fact that there were other altcoins out there that were outperforming Ethereum, okay? And the reason being is because I said, look guys, the Ethereum tsunami is coming, and it's going to sweep everyone away. And basically, there's these people out there telling you to go sell your Ethereum for an altcoin after the altcoin's already run. And that's the worst thing you can do, because we always know during one of these major moves like that by Bitcoin, alts run, and then Ethereum's the last to run. It typically puts it about a 2x. and then things calm down for a while. We saw it, we've seen it many, many times. Okay, this isn't the first rodeo that we've seen for Ethereum. So when you see that, and you see Ethereum go up 2x in a relatively short period of time, right after Bitcoin has made a colossal move, it generally means the move down is coming in the not so distant future. And we saw that, right? We saw the summer lull of Ethereum. So, but you look at the dominance, and you'll notice that we're actually near the prior local top. We're only below the wicks, but in terms of the candles, we're right there at the top. What does that show? Well, it shows you that since the crash, Ethereum has outperformed the market, generally speaking. Now, it hasn't outperformed Bitcoin. Okay, so Bitcoin has been the better one to hold for the last several months. If you measure it from, say, where we started dumping. Okay, because even though Ethereum's had a great 2 to 3 weeks, it still is technically down against Bitcoin about 17 or 18%. Okay, so if you only held Bitcoin or Ethereum from this point, you would have been better off just holding Bitcoin. But what you'll notice is when you actually plot it against the whole market and not just Bitcoin, Ethereum is performing really, really well. What that means is that it's holding on to its gains a lot better than a lot of the altcoins. Okay, and what you could maybe say is, the whole market went super, maybe overvalued, if you want to call it that. I would call it that. I don't know what you want to call it, but it went super overvalued. It came back down, and Ethereum's moving back up. And a lot quicker than these other altcoins. So it shows you how strong Ethereum is, and it shows you that it is a key blue chip crypto that anyone should have in their portfolio. I don't care if the market dumps tomorrow, right? I mean, if Ethereum goes back down to $2,000, I don't care. Like if it goes back down to $1,500, I don't care. That's just the way the market works, right? It's just the way the market works. But I would say that if you're going to be in crypto, you're already accepting the risk of that happening. And in my opinion, you can't afford to navigate crypto without Bitcoin and Ethereum, because both of them make major moves in the market and they overpower everything else at various stages. So Bitcoin and Ethereum are key assets to your portfolio, and Ethereum is showing you how strong it is right now. So the next time Bitcoin makes a major move, and then you see altcoins move, and then you see Ethereum maybe lagging behind a little bit, just remember, it bides its time, and then eventually that wave comes, and it just sweeps away. It sweeps away a lot of these other coins. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So going back to to what we're talking about, if we zoom in here, we are in fact above our 21-week EMA and 20-week SMA. The 20-week SMA is now at 24.34. The 21-week EMA is at 22.38. In the event of a pullback, okay, if we get a pullback, that might be an area to watch, right? Can we hold the 20-week SMA? Can we hold the 21-week EMA? Remember that it's not as important we hold it like it is for Bitcoin. There's been plenty of times where we don't hold it and we still are just fine. But I would say that would be a key area to watch in the event of a correction, okay, a few $100 correction or something. If Bitcoin were to have a slight pullback as well. So from here, again, Ethereum, Bitcoin, the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation is continuing to look pretty good at the moment. I would contend that later on this year, in Q4, it's probably going to bleed against Bitcoin, but who knows what happens between now and then, right? I mean, it could start tomorrow, it could start in a month or two. But I would contend that the October, November, December timeframe is typically not kind to the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation. The August timeframe is sort of a wash, right? I mean, like over here in August, the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation was doing quite well, and it wasn't until say early September that Ethereum started to bleed against Bitcoin. So if it's a repeat of last year, then maybe we have a few more weeks of this type of sentiment. Other years, the downtrend started at sooner. Like, I mean, this one started in late September. This one started in May and didn't really recover until the end of the year. So, it can definitely start at different times. But I would say that it could stay strong for a little while. And it will likely lose some of its strength against Bitcoin whenever Bitcoin makes a major move, whether that be to the upside or to the downside. And I mean like a strong move. I don't mean like I don't mean just like a like a small move of a couple $1,000s. I mean, like I'm talking about like Bitcoin going up like, you know, $10,000 or going down $10,000 in the matter of like 2 or 3 days or something. That is what will cause Ethereum to lose strength against Bitcoin. If Bitcoin continues just moving like $1,000 a day or something, then I mean Ethereum's probably going to keep doing quite well. So just keep that in mind. I would say the main worry at this point for Ethereum, it should be Bitcoin, and it should be whether Bitcoin can get above the 20-week. Because if it gets rejected, if Bitcoin gets rejected, then the assumption at that point would be, well, if it comes back down, then we know Ethereum is likely going to bleed against the US dollar and against Bitcoin. So that's the main concern for Ethereum right now. I know Ethereum has a lot going for it. I mean, NFTs, EIP 1559 upgrade, DeFi, institutional investors, etc. Like it's just a ton of stuff going for it. I know a lot of people think the market cycle is going to end this year. I don't. I mean, even from a non-data science perspective, I can't imagine. I really can't imagine it ending this year. I feel like, you know, this is gonna take place over several years, and it's a slow paradigm shift in crypto. And you know, it's going to take a lot longer than people think, and it's probably going to go higher than people think, and then it's going to drop more than people think. So I feel like we do have a long way to go before we reach you know, some nebulous market cycle peak way off in the distance. So I would say hang in there. Mainly keep an eye on the Bitcoin valuation. See if Bitcoin is sort of hanging out okay over here. If it is, Ethereum still likely has the green light. And if Bitcoin gets rejected, then I would expect the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation to stop showing so much strength. So that's what you should be looking out for. If you guys like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Also, check out the Telegram channel. You can find a link to that in the description below. Remember, you have the premium list if you want to know how I'm navigating these markets. Thank you guys for tuning in. Definitely subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. I will see you next time. Bye.